Welcome to the Exploring Neurodiversity podcast for adults who support neurodivergent children. Whether you're an allied health professional, medical professional, education professional, or a parent of a neurodivergent child, you are welcome here. This podcast is recorded on the Aboriginal lands of the Gadigal and Bidjigal people. I acknowledge the traditional owners, elders past and present, and I extend my acknowledgement to any Aboriginal and First Nations people listening in. I'm Adina from Play, Learn, Chat. I'm an autistic ADHD speech therapist, professional educator, speaker, and I also support neurodivergent business owners in my other business, Neurodivergent Business Coaching and Consulting. I'm obsessed with creating a world where neurodivergent people are understood, embraced, supported, and celebrated. A world where we neurodivergent people can understand ourselves and thrive in a life aligned with our individual strengths, wants, and needs. On the Exploring Neurodiversity podcast, you'll get my perspectives and conversations with my neurodivergent friends, all about how adults can best support neurodivergent children in our lives. I bring a neurodiversity affirming approach and indeed a human affirming approach to the support that we all provide for neurodivergent kids in our lives. Let's dive in.
A brief overview of what's been going on. The NDIS, National Disability Insurance Scheme in Australia, is the funding that is supposed to support disabled people to access the supports to pay and therefore access the things that they need to be okay, to live an okay life. It is a shit show. I get a little bit sweary in this episode, so if you're listening with kids around, just keep that in mind. And if you don't like swears, it's not too many, just the SH word. I'll try and keep it to that. Who gets to decide what evidence is valid and whose stories and realities get ignored in this process of deciding what perspectives are most valuable? If you're a health professional or an allied health professional or an academic, you have been brought up through your training to know and learn and seek evidence-based practice. This phrase and term has undergone different versions over time. There's E3BP, E4BP. I'm kind of awaiting E5BP. What I'm hoping to do through this episode and through a lot of content and writing that I've been doing lately is call out and really get us thinking critically about what is evidence. I've recently shared a post on social media and also through my emails talking all about, well, actually I titled it, "Your Published Research Does Not Negate My Lived Experience." And I'll be expanding on these ideas as well as linking it in with some very recent, timely and awful changes that's happening with the NDIS in Australia at the moment. That's our National Disability Insurance Scheme, for those not in the know, that is supposed to be funding support for disabled people. Now, before we go any further, I want to recognise that some of this conversation will challenge you. I hope so. It challenges me. In this redefining of evidence, we are unravelling a lot of our previous learning. We are questioning everything. We're calling out the biases, the unspoken privileges, and the exclusionary practices of what has formerly been classified as evidence. If this feels uncomfortable for you, good. I hope so. I want you to sit with that discomfort. I want you to go inwards and check with yourself. Where is that coming from? Where is that incongruence stemming from between what I'm sharing, what I'm asking you to reflect on, and your previously held beliefs and knowledge? Somebody commented on one of the slides in my recent social media post. Now, on that one slide, it's possible she may have just seen that image. She might have seen it completely out of context, or maybe not. I'm not sure. What is written on that slide? It says, "So what should we all collectively get better at?" And I suggested 3 things. One of them was, on this particular slide, it says, "Recognize that years of formal education, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and boatloads of ego do not qualify someone to speak for and over those who live that experience every day." So this person on Facebook wrote, "As a parent and an academic, I think this rhetoric is unhelpful." I am hoping that she will see my response, and I hope that she will continue that conversation and continue to reflect on what that thought of it being unhelpful might mean, where that comes from. The world of academia, published journal articles, professorship, authoring books, all of these things are highly inaccessible, highly unequal platforms, opportunities, and spaces. In many, many, many cases, the people at the top of these ladders do not have the lived experience of those that they talk about, of those that they claim to support. Now, I'm going to pause here and say there are more and more academics who are openly, knowingly neurodivergent, disabled. There is more and more fantastic work being put out there. There are many great allies putting out really great work, listening to those who have lived experience and platforming those who may not otherwise get a voice. That's great, and I'm hoping that the tide will continue to shift. What I'm speaking to here is the very large corner of academia that dismisses lived experience as something of lesser value than quantitative research, statistics. Humans are really complicated and messy. Humans are very individual. It's very challenging in these human sciences to get incredibly great, strong data to prove therapeutic interventions, but it's rife throughout all of the research evidence and the reports that we often have to write. Lived experience is so often dismissed as just anecdotal and therefore not important, helpful, valid, or worth listening to. Lived experience disrupts this academic norm, the stable complex of academia, which just goes to reinforce these hierarchies of power over and over and over again. Excluded people continue to be excluded. Systemic barriers like racism, ableism, and neuronormativity, that is not valuing neurodiversity, but instead valuing people acting, thinking the same. These systemic barriers are so deeply embedded, and we have to question it. Those barriers limit who gets to share their stories. They limit what concepts are considered true, what supports are worth paying for. And this here is where the changes in NDIS supports come in a big way to demonstrate just exactly how damaging this dismissal of lived experience is. NDIS this week and recently has been having a fabulous time slashing supports, trying to kick people out of the scheme and doing incredibly harmful, unfair practices like asking people to prove their disability over and over again with incredibly short timeframes, all in the name of cost cutting. They claim that what they're trying to do is ensure that the supports people are paying for are evidence-based. Cool, great, that sounds lovely. Here we go. What is evidence? We need to redefine evidence. The last few days, NDIS has declared that art therapy and music therapy funding will essentially be removed, rather than being funded at the same rate as other allied health professionals, which, by the way, art therapists and music therapists are allied health professionals. If indeed somebody gets that support in their NDIS plan, it's going to be for a lower rate that is something about 1/3 of that rate that it was before. Now, I know from a business perspective, having had my own business in this space and now supporting many other therapists with their business practices, this is a very thin edge industry. Profit margins are very, very small. It's incredibly challenging to have a thriving, financially buoyant private practice. And that's just on an everyday level. That doesn't even take into account when NDIS throw these huge curveballs where people's funding might get slashed, what people are getting funding for might get slashed. All these changes happen in very short notice so that people cannot even plan for the future. Now, a little bit later on, I will talk more about the business impacts and the challenges there as well. But let's keep our idea back here on, what's going on with the NDIS changes at the moment. So any practice who has art therapists and music therapists has until the 1st of February, I think it is, or one of the dates in February. So essentially 3 months notice to navigate these very significant changes. People who are sole practitioners, who are art therapists or music therapists, are absolutely not just struggling and concerned about how they're going to go financially into the future, but these changes have been thrown at them so quickly that their livelihoods may essentially be destroyed. This upends everything from the business perspective, the individuals within the businesses, the individuals who are being told by the NDIS that the work they do isn't as valuable as the work of other similar professionals, which is just absolute bullshit. It is not true. So, hi, art therapist or music therapist listening, I value you. I know that the work you do is incredibly deeply important. I've often shared clients with art or music therapists who have had incredible outcomes, and in some cases, we've stopped doing speech therapy so that they could continue those therapies because that was giving them more quality of life, more support than the speech therapy was at that point. Now, NDIS has decided that these therapies are not evidence-based enough, and that's why they're getting slashed. These are therapies that prioritize joy, connection, creativity. These things are harder to quantify. They bring holistic care, quality of life. Now, I hope that all of our therapies do this as well, but this is especially true for art and music therapy. Speech pathology, occupational therapy, psychology, social work, many of our other therapies traditionally are rooted in deficit models, in this medical model of trying to change people to get back to normal, in inverted commas, rather than trying to support people to understand themselves, live their best selves, be their most amazing self. Of course, I hope, and in all of the training that I offer around neurodiversity affirming practice, I hope that we're shifting this for a lot of our industries. But this is where we came from. These are the histories and the big burden of our professions. So NDIS has decided that some allied health professions are more valuable based on evidence. Now, what evidence? I haven't had a chance to dig into their probably very boring articles that outline exactly how they've come to their decisions. I assume they're out there for public consumption, and I assume that these documents themselves are likely very gatekeepy, wordy, difficult to navigate, like many of the other publications that they put out. What I know is that NDIS did not listen to, or certainly didn't value, the perspectives of those with lived experience, disabled people who access art and music therapy, and their families who can report on the incredible positive change that has happened for many, many people accessing these therapies. So this recent news is just another massive blow to a system that is already incredibly unstable and ableist, broken and unfair. When institutions like NDIS, like academic institutions, dismiss the value of lived experience, especially from those of marginalised groups and intersectional marginalised groups, multiply marginalised people are the least represented in all of these formal decisions. People who have multiple identities where they are marginalised for multiple reasons. They may be perhaps it's somebody who is Black, Indigenous, or a person of colour, and disabled, and LGBTIQ+. These are the perspectives given least voice out there in the world. They often have the least power to determine what their future is, what they are allowed to do and not do. Now, I'm going to recognize here I myself have multiple privileges and some marginalizations as well. It's something I think about in great depth, and I'm constantly challenging this as well. What I aim to do, and I hope this comes through, is to use my positions of privilege as, for example, a white woman with an education living in a safe place who can use mouth words a lot, i.e. I have 2 podcasts. Many of these factors stack up, and I'm trying to use my position of privilege to shake things up in a bigger way and to give platform, voice and support for those who don't have as much opportunity to have their perspectives shared. So I did this recently, for example, in a survey that I ran, getting diverse perspectives of autistic folks around eye contact. There was a podcast episode that goes with that as well. It's episode 43, and you can also check out the full results of that survey, which is at my website, playlearnchat.com/i-contact. In fact, the survey is still open, and from time to time, I'll be updating that website with new perspectives that have been shared. So please feel free, if you are autistic, to go there and add your voice to that as well. So that's just one example of how I do that. I also aim to share more and more diverse perspectives on the podcast, and I will say this is just a little extra sidebar. I'm thinking about my 2025 guests, so please do feel free to get in touch if you are a neurodivergent person and you feel that you have a story, a perspective to share on the Exploring Neurodiversity podcast. No matter what your accessibility needs and communication support needs, I would love to have you on in whatever way we can make work for you. So that even includes if you're a non-speaking or not always speaking person, we have a lot of technology available, a lot of options for how we can get your perspective out there on the podcast. So please get in touch. There'll be a link in the show notes if you feel that you have something that you'd like to share on the podcast next year. That is your invitation. I will continue to, open up the floor to more and more diverse neurodivergent voices. Anyway, that's a sidebar. Let's come back to this redefining evidence. We need to break this cycle of exclusion. That's what I'm trying to do here. I really hope that I'm starting to shift the sands a little bit. I want you to keep checking in with yourself. If I have poked something in you with something that I've shared today, if I've challenged your livelihood, challenged your perspectives, challenged your deeply held beliefs about what kind of evidence is valuable to be listening to pay for, I want you to do some reflecting on it. Please do. And feel free to come back to me with your reflections and thoughts as you go. I will say what I find incredibly challenging personally. This is my own lived experience. And I know that this is the experience of many other neurodivergent people, many other disabled people, is it takes an incredibly high emotional toll and cognitive toll and energetic toll when we have to keep proving our validity in the world. As an autistic ADHDer with a boatload of anxiety and a few other things going on. What I also have is the ability to mask my truth. This comes with other challenges like people not believing my experience, my neurotype, my internalized presentation in many cases of how I experience my brain, my life, my world. I have days with lots of energy. I have good systems, tools. I have a fairly big audience. Hello out there. Thank you for listening. I have a lot of things that help me defend my reality in ways that are not too taxing. For example, here I am sharing this podcast episode and a few hundred of you will probably be listening to it. So I only have to say it once and it will reach many of you. So that's really, really cool. But there are still so many opportunities or cases in my life where I have to justify my existence first to myself, then to feel that I'm valid enough in my own experience that it's worth sharing. I also have to feel that by sharing my needs, my experience, my perspective, that it might make a change. Self-advocating is bloody hard. It's really unfair that those who need support most have to spend the most energy seeking that support, shouting against a system that is trying to squash us down. I'm exhausted just thinking about it. So I'm probably going to wrap this up soon because this is big and heavy, and I want to leave you with a few big ideas, but I do want to come back to the business impacts thought. So I shared a little bit about that before. I've talked about it a bit here, and some of you know that I have a second business, Neurodivergent Business Coaching and Consulting, where I support primarily neurodivergent business owners to shift their businesses to fit their lives, their needs, their dreams, their values so much better. So I do a lot of business coaching. I think business, I sleep in business, I dream in business, and I am just so devastated for anyone who is navigating these very quick, very broken decisions around art and music therapy funding being basically pulled. I also have a great deal of empathy, and my heart goes out to any business functioning in the NDIS world. It is constantly changing. That means you can't really plan ahead. You can't easily plan for the future staffing of your business, your financials. Everything is up in the air. The services you offer are being shaped by the funding that people have and that they're bringing to you, and that is being shaped by what the NDIS says is worth funding, and also how much funding they get. Power is being completely taken away from business owners to make what would normally be just completely everyday business decisions. Things like, how much should I charge for my service? Most businesses on earth get to choose how much they charge for a service. Businesses dealing with NDIS funding are basically being dictated to exactly how they're supposed to run their business, and that is not working for so many. One of the biggest challenges that I see is people really want to run groups that would be therapeutically validated and supportive, and people are asking for it. Clients or prospective clients are asking for it, and NDIS makes it nearly impossible to run groups that are financially viable on the business perspective. I have a webinar on this called Making Groups Happen, which will actually be on sale on Friday, the 29th of November. So I'm going to put the link in the show notes where you can go and check that out. There's actually all of my neurodiversity affirming practice and business webinars are going to be on sale 40% off on that one day, but the link will be there anyway. So if you missed that day, if you're listening to this after the fact, that's okay. You can still get it. It's still very affordable. Where I help allied health practice owners think about how to set up the finances around a group, the marketing and other aspects too. All of this to say is, I guess one of my privileges I need to call out is I have a brain that innovates, and maybe that's sort of ADHD me to some degree, kind of thinking what else, how else could things look, what else could I try? There's also, I think, autistic me. I find it very easy to challenge status quo. Hello, that's what we're doing in this podcast episode. It's very natural for me to question things. Why do we do it that way? How could it be different? My brain does think in different ways, and I see patterns in what people are asking for in economics. I understand how things fit together, and I can seek out opportunities. This is what I love helping other people do. If you are a business dealing with anything in the NDIS space, I mean, if you're a business anywhere, it's important, but this is so crucial for you right now. You have to innovate in some way. Sitting there and waiting for the changes to happen to your business, you will be left behind. You will be left struggling. You'll be chasing the tail of these NDIS press releases that quickly change things, and you will just be scrambling to figure out what next. Now, I'm not going to erase all the scrambling because NDIS makes everyone do that anyway, but you can buffer it. You can get very proactive and take some steps towards innovating what your service delivery looks like, innovating how you price for it, innovating how you do everything else in your business around the direct service delivery to streamline the heck out of it so you do have more capacity to deliver direct services without draining you so much. There are so many ways that I love supporting business owners in that. And if any of that is of interest to you, there's a few things I want you to check out straight away. I've got a fresh workshop that I've released. I've opened up the doors to. It is called Your Streamlined Practice. This is for any allied health practice owner who can come to Sydney on Friday the 10th and Friday the 17th of January 2025. You do not have to be neurodivergent to join this. There will be some neurodivergent business owners there, and any business owner who has an allied health practice is welcome to join for that event. Those 2 days of the workshop, and then there's 2 ongoing support days a month and 2 months later. I am helping people streamline their practices. We are diving into your processes, your procedures, your digital tools with a framework that I share so that you are making your whole back end of your business streamlined so it fits. It's easy. It's as hands-off as possible for you if you have a team, for your team as well. And most importantly, we're also making sure that your businesses are more and more accessible for people of different neurotypes and of different communication and support needs. So this is really the beautiful mashup of neurodiversity affirming practice and streamlined business systems. Like, this is everything I love. This is my brainchild. So there's just 11 spaces going to be available in that workshop. It is live. It's in person. We're going to be I'm catering it. It's in a beautiful room. It's awesome. It's going to be awesome. The link is in the show notes. Whenever you're listening, you can go and check it out. So if it's full, if early bird pricing is finished, you might still be able to grab a spot. If it's done, it's in the past, you might be able to get on the wait list. So go and check it out. It is called Your Streamlined Practice. And I am actually running it through my neurodivergent business coaching and consulting business. But essentially, it's a collaboration between the two sides of me. There are other ways that I support business owners, neurodivergent business owners especially. So also do go check out neurodivergent business coaching and consulting and see the other options that I have to support you. I want to leave us on a note of hope. I don't want it all to be doom and gloom. There is change afoot. You are part of it. I am part of it. I am so deeply proud of being part of this neurodivergent-led advocacy movement. I am so proud of the over 1,500, and it's probably a lot more by now, professionals who have accessed my training. And I'm so grateful for so many people who are open-minded to understand new ways, shift thinking, and to challenge this idea of what evidence is valuable to listen to. This is a movement. It is increasing bit by bit. You are part of it, and thank you for being here. Thank you for being open-minded to shifting what you always knew, what you were always taught, what you always believed. I hope that you continue to listen to diverse neurodivergent voices to inform how you support neurodivergent people in your life. I hope that we all continue to center lived experience, really deeply value it, to challenge and call out the privileges that other people have, to inspect our own biases, dismantle that, and to rebuild a system that actually reflects the needs of the communities that we are supporting. Just a small goal there. Anyway, thanks for being here, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. So feel free to get in touch. Send me an email, hi@playlearnchat.com. Link will be in the show notes for that. And also you can send a chat to me on Instagram.
Thank you so much for sharing this space and time with me. Thank you for being open to learning and unlearning and to listening to the perspectives and experiences of neurodivergent folks. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with a friend, share a screenshot on Instagram, pop a 5-star rating and a review in your favorite app, and join me on Instagram and Facebook. I'm at play.learn.chat. Have a spectacular day.